a tormented phase in the history of the Church. Today, simply known as the Inquisition. To aid the panel in their research, the Pope announces the public opening of the secret archives of the Inquisition, archives that have been off-limits to outside scholars for over 200 years. The 79-year-old pontiff is wrestling with one of the most crucial questions of his career. Should the Catholic Church offer an official apology for sins committed during the Inquisition? The issue is a powder keg of controversy, even among historians.
I said very firmly at the meeting that, in my view, this apology is unnecessary because the Church was not responsible for much of the persecution which we have had in the European past.
The Church, after all, does have some responsibility historically. Whatever the Roman Inquisition did wrong, it's impossible to say that it wasn't the papacy who did it.
All scholars of the Inquisition must face a central, disturbing question. How did an institution of the Church become the instrument by which thousands of human lives were destroyed over the course of 6 centuries? The answer begins with the understanding that there never was one single all-powerful Inquisition, but rather separate institutions in Spain, Portugal, and Italy. What they all shared was a dark, abiding fear, the fear of religious heresy. 1100 A.D., the heart of the Dark Ages. A loose alliance of kingdoms and provinces known as the Holy Roman Empire make up most of the area we know today as modern Europe. In the nearly 800 years since the Roman king Constantine converted to Christianity, the religion once considered an insurrectionist sect is now the only legal faith, pervading all levels of personal, social, and political life. Latin European Christianity symbolizes not only a civilizing force in a barbaric world, but also the promise of salvation after death. Clergy and citizens alike live in fear of God's harsh judgment. Still, there are dissidents who dare to challenge sacred Christian doctrine. The Church labels such rebels as sinners or heretics.
Simply being wrong about church dogma doesn't make you a heretic, because there's lots of church dogma. But what makes you as a heretic is being wrong, informed by the appropriate church authorities that you're wrong, and then persisting in that error in the face of authority.
The word heresy comes from the Latin heresis, which means simply choice. By the 12th century, heresy has a much more dire meaning. It is a mortal threat to society and to mankind, treason against God.
According to civil law, criminals convicted of treason are punished with death and their goods are confiscated. With how much more reason then should they who offend Jesus, Son of the Lord our God, be cut off from the Christian communion and stripped of their goods? Pope Innocent III.
Despite the Church's strong stand on this crime, free-thinking groups continue to emerge, insisting on interpreting God's message in their own ways. Among them are the Waldensians, itinerant preachers who wander through southern France and northern Italy, living lives of apostolic poverty.
The appeal of the Waldensians seems to have been their argument for a simplified view of Christianity. The ability of anyone to preach, if inspired by the Spirit, whether a cleric or not.
The Church insists that anyone preaching publicly must be licensed by the local bishop. When the Waldensians refuse to give up preaching, Pope Lucius III issues an edict known as a papal bull, condemning the movement as heretical and excommunicating its followers.
Heresy was considered a threat to the Christian community It was something that would disturb the people, and not only disturb the people, disturb society, but it would alienate them from the faith. That's why it was so important to fight this.
The Waldensians are mild compared to the more radical heretics, the Cathars. Cathars consider theirs to be the only true religion and remain openly hostile to the established church, which they consider evil. Cathars call their priests perfecti, or good Christians. Vowed to a life of strict abstinence, they cannot lie, swear oaths, eat animal flesh, or engage in sexual intercourse. As critics accuse the organized church and its clergy of more and more abuses of clerical power, the austerity of the Cathar perfecti seems extremely attractive by comparison.
In that sense, it is an embarrassment for the church to have a group who are earnestly living in accordance with the life of Christ and his apostles as compared to a church run by lawyers and great administrators who live like great princes.
By the 13th century, Europe is a hotbed of heresy. In southern France, Catharism flourishes. Tensions escalate until Cathar conspirators murder a papal representative preaching in the Languedoc region in 1208. Outraged, Pope Innocent III calls for a new kind of crusade, one against heretics.
He essentially called on the nobility of northern France to go down to the south of France, turn out local nobles who were not persecuting Catharism, take over and create the conditions in which Catharism could be stamped out of the countryside.
The Pope calls his war against fellow Christians the Albigensian Crusade, after the French cathedral town of Albi. The atrocities committed by his northern crusaders become legendary. Cathar perfecti, easily identified in their black robes, are executed on the spot.
Perfecti didn't camouflage themselves, partly because, remember, death would release them from this terrible material world into which the bad God had plunged them. There is a self-conscious tendency, at least, toward martyrdom.
However, after years of bloodshed, the sly perfecti decide to shed their distinctive garb and gradually slip underground. Though celibate, they even begin traveling with women, claiming them as their wives. Now Pope Innocent III is left with the same conundrum with which he started. The purpose of the church is to spread salvation, and a dead heretic is no good to anyone but the devil. The troubled pontiff considers the judicial system of his day. The usual procedure, accusatorial, forces the wronged party to make an accusation in public. If the accuser fails to prove his case, he is punished in the same way the accused would have been. This process makes even legitimate accusers reluctant to step forward. Innocent III realizes these rules won't serve his long-term purposes. In 1215, the Pope calls the world's Latin Christian leaders together for the Fourth Lateran Council in Rome. Innocent uses the summit to announce his new legal guidelines for the prosecution of heretics and wayward clergy. Thus, the Inquisition is born.
The inquisitorial system was a wonderful innovation, and it's very much like the grand jury in our system coming up with probable cause, coming up with an indictment. They do not have to have proof. They just have to have enough belief or enough evidence that this person may be guilty.
Innocent's inquisitorial process empowers an investigator to build an entire case by secretly collecting the opinions of people in the community. By 1231, Pope Gregory IX puts out a call for the appointment of special agents termed Inquisitors of Heretical Depravity to take on this new job.